All right, let's get right into it. Something big is happening in Dubai. They're rolling out a brand new salary rule, and honestly, it's poised to totally shake up their unique job market. So, what we're going to do is break down what this new minimum wage actually is, who it's for, and what it might mean for the future of work over there.
So let me ask you something just to kind of set the scene here. Imagine a country with no universal minimum wage, like no legal floor for how little you can be paid. Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, for decades, that's pretty much been the situation in the UAE, especially for the huge number of expats working there. But things are definitely starting to change.
And to really get why this new rule is such a big deal, you first have to understand how things have worked in Dubai and the wider UAE up until now. For a very long time, it's been a job market, well, without a floor, at least a mandatory one for most people. Now, here's where it gets interesting. It's not like there was nothing. There were, let's call them guidelines, but they weren't legally binding. And that is the huge shift we're talking about today. We're moving from just suggestions to a hard and fast, legally enforceable rule. But, and this is key, it's for a specific group, Emirati citizens in the private sector.
So what were these old guidelines? Well, the ministry basically suggested about 12,000 dirhams for university grads, 7,000 for skilled technicians, and 5,000 for skilled laborers. But the key thing to remember, the most important part, is that these were just suggestions, benchmarks. You didn't have to follow them by law.
Okay, so that brings us to the main event. The government is throwing out those old guidelines and bringing in a strict official rule. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of what this new policy actually says. All right, here is the number you need to know. 6,000 dirhams a month. That's about 1,635 US dollars. This is the new official legal minimum wage for Emirati citizens working in the private sector. So you can see it's a real jump up from that old 5,000 dirham guideline we just talked about. And look, this isn't happening tomorrow. They're giving everyone time to prepare. The rule officially starts on January 1st, 2026. After that, companies get a 6-month window, a grace period, to get all their existing contracts with Emirati employees up to speed. The final, hard deadline is June 30th. So you might be asking, why are they doing this now? What's the big idea? Well, this new rule didn't just come out of nowhere. It's actually a really important piece of a much, much bigger plan for the country. And that big plan has a name, Emiratization. What is that? Put simply, it's this huge government push to get more of its own citizens, Emiratis, working in the private sector. The whole goal is to make those private sector jobs more appealing and competitive for them. Okay, so let's switch gears. What does all this mean for the businesses actually operating in Dubai? Well, for them, this new rule creates what you could call a dual challenge. And that challenge is pretty straightforward. First, companies already have to hire a certain number of Emirati nationals. That's the quota. But now, on top of that, they also have to make sure every single one of those Emirati employees is paid at least this new minimum salary. So it's a 1-2 punch of compliance they have to deal with. And make no mistake, the government is not messing around with this. If companies don't comply, they could have their new work permits suspended, get kicked out of the Emiratization quota system, and, of course, they'll have to deal with higher payroll costs, all while the ministry is watching them like a hawk. Okay, that's the story for citizens and businesses. But what about the elephant in the room? What about the millions of expats working in Dubai? I mean, this law doesn't technically apply to them, but you can bet it's going to cause some serious ripple effects throughout the whole job market. And to see what those ripples might look like, just check out some of these typical salary ranges. You can see they're all over the place. Now, that new 6,000 dirham minimum for Emiratis, it kind of slots into the lower end for a lot of professional jobs. But, and this is a big but, it's way higher than what many entry-level jobs pay, especially in places like retail or hospitality. Yeah, this really puts it into perspective. That new minimum for citizens is way above the typical starting pay for jobs that are filled mostly by expats. Think about retail, where the average might be around 4,000 dirhams, or even marketing, where it might start at 5,500. 6,000 is a big step up. So here's the bottom line. Analysts are predicting what they call a knock-on effect. It's simple, really. When you raise the salary floor for one group of people, it naturally puts pressure on the wages for everyone else in similar jobs. Suddenly, companies have to look at their entire pay structure and rethink everything. Which brings us to the big finish. What does this all mean for the future?
Is this just a one-time thing, or are we seeing the beginning of a massive transformation in the UAE's job market?
One thing is absolutely for sure. This is a huge evolution. You have a job market that for so long has been all about a flexible, free market approach to pay. So to introduce a legal minimum wage, even if it's just for one group, that is a massive step towards modernizing their labor laws. And so that leaves us with the $1,000,000 or maybe the 6,000 dirham question. As everyone looks to the future, policymakers, businesses, workers, they're all wondering the same thing. Is this just the beginning? Is this the first step toward a minimum wage for everyone in the UAE? Well, I guess only time will tell.